Hi everyone, we welcome you all to this Week Tech Tuesday webinar on Configure EDC Metadex Scanner with Microsoft SSIS, SSRS and SQL Server stored procedures. Today's speakers are Srinivasa and Punit, who are Principal Solutions Architects. Before we start the session, let's go through some of the housekeeping tips. The webinar is for 1 hour that includes 15 minutes Q&A. You can post your queries in Q&A box which will be answered at the end of the presentation. All participants will be muted during the presentation. The session will be recorded and it will be available on our InfoSupport YouTube channel and Success Portal where you will be able to download the slide deck. Please feel free to submit your suggestion or feedback for this session in the post-webinar survey. The Success Portal is a microlearning platform that offers free, unlimited learning to all the registered users. This feature-rich platform helps you learn and adopt to Informatica products better. The following are few links that you can go over later. This will help you with your product adoption journey with Informatica. Over to you, Srinivasa and Punit. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Here is the agenda for today's webinar. We'll go through a brief overview of Advanced Scanner or Metadex, the SQL Server stored procedure configuration, SQL Server integration service and reporting service configurations, demo and question answers. The Metadex itself has a reader, common processing and writer module. It's hosted on internal repository. The source system can be a database, file system, data integration, which can be parsed through the Metadex components and loaded into the EDC resources. The configuration itself is an iterative process. You can create it, execute it, and enhance it until you are satisfied with the results. From 10.5.3 onwards, you can use the authentication mode in Informatica to authenticate users in Metadex. The supported authentication modes are native, LDAP, and Active Directory. The system level privileges are admin or repository viewer. It can be granted to the individual accounts or it can be at a group level. The project level privileges are viewer, operator, developer, or owner. So let's look into the SQL Server stored procedure configuration. Here are the prerequisites for the SQL Server stored procedure configuration. Try to split it into logical applications. If you have line of business like accounting, treasury, finance, create separate configuration for each of those areas. To connect to the Microsoft SQL database, use a Typeforce JDBC driver that comes with installation. To establish connectivity between the EDC and the Microsoft SQL database, enable the port, and the default port is 1433. Ensure you have right permissions for the service accounts that is being used to connect to the database. With all these privileges listed here, it is also listed in the configuration guide as well. The majority of time taken is the access request to ensure that these prerequisites are met before trying it in the actual application. Here is a sample configuration that is done in Metadex UI. You can create the configuration with the conversion path of advanced database objects to EDC, provide the meaningful name and description, select the read from option with the database object reader module with stored procedures. Other things that you can select is database assets and views. Refer to the best practices which is followed in the slides below. The connection registry, you need to establish the connection with the default port is 1433 and provide the host name with the database name and ensure that the database name as its connection string is added. This is mandatory. Once you have the executed job, you should see the result in the monitoring window like this in EDC. So let's move into the SQL Server integration service configuration. Here are the prerequisites. Try to split it into logical applications and create configuration for each logical application. For example, if you have line of business of treasury or accounting, create separate configurations for each of those subject areas. The SSIS reader module has file or SSISDB option. SSISDB is a preferred method. If you proceed with the file-based approach, you can export the input files to the server where you previously installed Metadex with the dtutil utility. You can get this utility during the Microsoft SQL Server installation. If you store packages as files in the DTSX format, export the input files from the file system. For the SSISDB option, if the packages are deployed, the Metadex scanners can connect to it directly and extract the required DTSX connection manager and parameter files. Here is a sample configuration for the file reader module. The conversion path needs to be Microsoft SSIS to EDC. The SSIS reader module mode is set to files, and the input files is the path where the DTSX file was previously exported. Here's a sample configuration for SSISDB module. The SSIS reader module mode is set to SSISDB. The SSISDB connection needs to be defined in SSISDB connection name and mapped in connections. The entry should match the host name and database name of the connection. Ensure it's matching in the connection registry page. Set the read SSIS package configuration to true so that it can read the package configurations. The connection registry, you need to set the SQL Server enable SSISDB set to on so that it knows that it is an SSISDB connection. Validate the results in the Metadex UI as well as in the EDC admin console and ensure that all of the steps are successful. Let's move into a SQL Server reporting service configuration. Here are the prerequisites. Try to split it into logical applications and create separate configuration for each logical application, which is a similar approach that we discussed already. The SSRS source can be file-based or web service-based approach. The web service is a preferred method. If you proceed with a file-based approach, you can collect metadata using the SSRS exporter tool or utility, which is supplied as part of the Advanced Scanner installation itself. This tool works only with the Microsoft Windows operating system. The connection assignment needs to be resolved in order to get lineage. Hence, it's critical for if you have a data lineage use case. The reporting application can connect to X number of databases and all those databases needs to be resolved. The report server configuration manager has a domain and service account details and that is used as part of the exporter utility. The syntax and the example is provided here with the JSON file example here. The required credentials, the domain URL, the include and exclude filters. It can be specific to a folder or report, or it can be a wildcard. The target directory needs to be accessible where it will have the XML files. Here's an example of the exporter utility supplied with the JSON as a parameter, and the output can be seen as an XML file. Here's a sample configuration. The SSRS source is set to files and the input files is an XML. Here's a monitoring window of the SSRS resource that is post execution of the job in Metadex. The connection assignment and the metadata scans can be seen successful. This is a sample configuration for web service. The SSRS source is set to web service. The web service credentials, the domain and URL is being supplied where Metadex can directly connect to the application and extract all the required metadata. Let's move into best practices. For any new configuration or a change to an existing configuration, as a pre-check, use generate output files option in Enterprise Catalog Writer to test the scanner configuration and execute the job and review the results. Post verification, please switch to the REST API to load the resulting content into EDC. The resource name that is provided in the Metadex config of Enterprise Catalog Writer should not already be existing in EDC. Create directory in workspace for each conversion path. For the conversion path of advanced database objects to EDC, select the views, database assets, and stored procedures if the use case is limited to metadata scan or data lineage only. However, if the views or tables need to have a data discovery and profiling as well, only stored procedure need to be selected in Metadex UI configuration. Create separate resource in EDC Catalog Administrator using the regular MS SQL Server scanner. For SSIS conversion path, best approach is to use SSISDB reader module, and for the SSRS conversion path, leverage the web service reader module. Handing it over to Puneet for the demo.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Srini, for completing the presentation deck. And now we can quickly jump to the demo. So now, as you can see, this is the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio I've opened. So under this, like I'm using one source table as a human resources employee table, which is nothing but a regular employee table, which the employee identification columns. And as part of the stored procedure I have created, this is like SP underscore CST employee, which is simply taking the values from the employee table and inserting into the employee CST SP table. And once we execute this stored procedure, the values get loaded. That's the small stored procedure we have created. And we can see that the stored procedure, once created and saved, will be available under the programmability stored procedures tab. So this is the stored procedure that we have saved. So now, once the stored procedure is available under the database, the next part would be to get onto the Metadex side and create the scanner. So this is one of the scanner we have created, SQL Server SP -TT. And so as part of the read from, we have selected the stored procedures, views, and data assets. And there, and under the enterprise writer catalog, we have created the resource name, advanced scanner MS SQL SP underscore TT, which means this will be the resource name that will get created once we see on the LDM admin side. And there is one object include filters, which is the connection we have created. So we have seen that MS-demo underscore AdventureWorks 2019 -DBO. So where this is defined. So once we go on the administration connection registry, we see under the MS demo, there is a connection as AdventureWorks 2019. This is basically like the, it contains the JDBC URL to the SQL Server. That's what it is. And so based on this, the connection, the scanner actually reads the connection details, and the next processing is happened. So if we go back to the connection, yeah. So we can see once the scanner run was run and the execution completed, it was there. And once it is completed, you can see the connection will be available on the LDM admin. So once we see the advanced scanner MS SQL SPTT is there, and the only part that was done once the scanner was available was the connection assignment to the source and target databases. So here, as part of this demo, we will be using two MS SQL resources. One is the regular MS SQL resource, which is I've created as MS SQL underscore SSIS underscore SSRS which is a standard resource that has been created from the LDM admin page, and one we created from the advanced scanner Metadex page. So the difference between two scanners essentially is that the regular scanner, which is created from the Metadex from the standard LDM admin page, is that it can scan your sources, tables, and stored procedures as well. And along with that, it can do the profiling and data classifications as a data discovery. But the only challenge here is that it cannot bring the lineages associated to the stored procedure. So this is where, in order to get to the stored procedure lineage, we need to use the advanced scanner for SQL Server. So from the SQL Server scanner side, it can scan the metadata for like tables, views, and bring in the stored procedures as well. But the limitation of this scanner is that it cannot do the data discovery and the profiling work. So that is one of the a fallback of this. So this is where, as part of this demo, we'll be utilizing both these scanners. And once both these scanners are available on the LDM side, we will jump to the LDM catalog. So here, I like, as you can see, like this is my scanner. I have the like 4 schemas here that I scanned as part of the filters. And under this schema, human resource, I have a table as employee. So once I go to the employee table, I can see all the columns, which was essentially the my source table for the stored procedure. And now jumping to the lineages and impacts. Yeah. So as we can see that MSI SQL SSRT was my actual resource, which was the standard SQL scanner. And employee table is the table we have created, which shows that the schema as human resources. And now my target table was the table that we created as employee CST SP, which it was under the schema as DBO. And now once I enable the transformation view, we can go to the transformation actually, and let's select a few columns. birthday, gender, and hire. So we can check the data transformation for one of the column. So here we can see for the gender, we can see the transfer. So here it's the same view, but now we can see the stored procedure included as well. So this is essentially the stored procedure definition. We have under that we have the stored procedure instance, and under that we see all the calculations involved. So as part of this, like we can see the resource name and all that. So it's essentially we are just copying from one table to another as part of the stored procedure. But as and when you have the complex calculations involved, you should be able to see the calculations involved here. Now, once I click on the statement at line 702, which is essentially the create procedure statement on the actual procedure that we started, this is the 7th line over there. So let me click here, and once we do that, I see basically again all the columns that are showing as calculations, since I was just inserting from like the source table to there. And now if we see in the overview, under the system attributes, there is a visualization tab. So once we click on it, it actually takes me back to the Metadex where I can see the visualization over there. So if I click it, like it's showing the graph, and now I see the employee table input, employees ST as the output. And now if I try to expand it, I can actually see, and if I try to click over, I can see the components involved here, like the description. So this is a visualization that like we get a little bit from the from the EDC side to back to the Metadex. The next part we will continue with this demo is scanning the SSIS projects. So as part of the SSIS scanning, Metadex allows us to scan using two ways. One is having the SSISDB as the input directly, and one is using the .dtsx file. So definitely scanning the SSISDB is the recommended approach, and we'll get started with that. So to get started with that, this is my Visual Studio project for integration project type. And in that, I have created a project where this is like a source, which is I'm reading from person schema and person table. And I have added one derived column transformation, which is essentially I'm just converting my first name and last name to the uppercase. And then there is a target I have created, which is a person.ssisdb underscore output under the DVO schema. So once I save this package, it gets saved locally as the SSISDB SSIS underscore SSISDB underscore tt.dtsx on my Visual Studio. And in order for this to be saved on my SSISDB repo, I will need to deploy this project. So once this gets deployed, I can see it is available on my database under the SSISDB. So once I go to my Visual Studio, under the integration service catalogs, I have SSISDB, and under that I have created a folder as SSISDB underscore TT. So under this, I can see the SSISDB TT project, and under this is my package, SSIS underscore SSISDB underscore TT dot DTS. This is the actual package which is deployed under the SSISDB. And for this demo, like we have utilized the table as person.person, which is essentially a person table and contains some of the person columns. And as part of the transformation we use, we are converting them to the first name and last name to the uppercase, which we can see below. So once this part is done and the SSIS package has been deployed, the next part is to create a SSIS type resource on the Metadex side. That is something we will be doing now. So once a resource is created, as we saw that on the reader module, there are two options. One is using scanning the SSISDB directly, and another is the input file. so which is fine. So we are going with the SSISDB mode first. So here we are doing that, and for this approach, we need to define the SSISDB database connection name, which is we are using SSISDB, and the actual connection value we are defining in the data source connections here. So you can see under the database connection key there is SSISDB, and the corresponding MD repo resolved entry is there. So when we say the resolved entry, which actually means it's reading from the connections under the administration tab. I'll be showing that in a second. And once on the enterprise data catalog side, I am creating a resource as adv underscore scanner underscore SSIS underscore SSISDB underscore TT. So once we go to the LDM admin, and once this job gets executed and completed successfully, we will see the connection with this name available on the LDM admin. So in order to show the connection, which is like msdemo.ssisdb underscore tt.dbu, this is something we can see here. So we go to the administration connections registry, msdemo, and under that we see SSISDB tt. So this is basically the JDBC URL along with the SQL Server connection. So one thing that we need to take care is that we need to add a property as a SQL Server like in the property we need to add one property as SQL Server dot enable dot SSISDB is equal to on. This is something we need to set. And another thing we need to keep in mind is that SSIS needs to have the Windows authentication user only. We cannot use a SQL native user to connect to the SSISDB. So once this is set up and the run is completed successfully, we go to the LDM admin page and check for the scanner. So we see that the advanced scanner is there, SSISDB, and the scan is complete. The only part that we have done from the LDM admin side is the connection assignment, like we did for the previous stored procedure connection. And now, once the connection is set up and everything is validated, the next part is to go to the LDM catalog. So once we are on the LDM catalog, again, I'm on the resource, and under the schemas, I checked the schemas, and I had a person schema. Under that, my person is my table. I went there, and now I can see all the columns associated and the profiling values that we did before. And then in the lineage and impact, so we can see there is a person table, which is coming from the standard SQL Server resource and is like under the person schema. Similarly, there is a person SSISDB output table, which is under the DBO schema. That is something source and output. Now let me select the transformation here. So once I select the transformation tab and I go to the transformation, so I can actually see the person table and the output is there. And now I can see SSISDB as the folder. Under that, it's the project. And under that, it's the actual package. So the package inside that. So that's how the flow is happening. And maybe let me select a few columns to show. Let's say first name, last name, middle name. So as we can see, like we have it's showing the transformation for the upper name, first case, and all that. So since the transformation was just applicable for these two columns, and now this is the flow happening from source across the SSIS repo or SSIS package, what it is deployed, and then to the output. Now, if I click on the data flow task here. Yeah, so it essentially shows me again all the calculations involved here. And once I check the overview in the system attributes, it gives me a visualization view. And once I hit this visualization view, it takes me back to the Metadex, where it shows me the flow happening, like between the source to the transformation of the output table. And let's take I click that, it shows me the description, like creates new columns values by applying expressions to transformation input values. For example, concatenate the values from first name and last name to make a full name. So again, this is something person, this is the output and the transformation that we have applied. So it shows me the complete flow on the Metadex side as well. Now we can jump to the input reader module as the files type. Here, like as we know that Metadex provides you two options. One is the SSISDB and the other input module as the files. So that's where the files we are going to discuss now. So here, as part of this demo, I've created another Visual Studio project for integration service type. And here, for this, I've simply created a resource as human resource employee table, which we saw earlier as well. And I have created a target table, which is nothing but employees SSIS table under the DVO schema. And I am not going to deploy this package since I don't need this to be available under the SSISDB, and I want to deploy this as a file. So I am simply going to file and save all. So once I save all, it gives me where to save, and now it will be on the local. You will see that all the corresponding files and the DTSX package will get saved. So once you have the DTSX file available, the next part would be to copy this file and place it on the Linux server path using either the WinSCP or the FileZilla, whatever is available. So on which path this needs to be placed, we will just see in a minute. Now, so this is my Linux server, and for me, I have configured the path as input files, msdemo, SSIS input. This is where I have placed. Now, let's go back to the Metadex where we are going to create a connection and resource. So here we are creating another resource for with the file type as Microsoft SSIS to EDC. And here the reader module type is files instead of SSISDB. Now, since we are selecting the file, it is important we need to define the path. And in our environment, we have certain parameterizations that we have done. This is something that can be done at your end as well. So I'm using the msdemo root directory. Under that, I have created a folder at SSIS input, and package DTSX is my file. In case you want all the packages to be scanned under that, you can put maybe startup DTSX, that should be fine. But since I'm just looking forward to scan only one package, I am using specifying the package name. And here, in this file, I'm creating a scanner as adv underscore scanner underscore SSISTT. For this particular creation. And so I truly don't need a connection creation for this, since I'm directly reading for a DTSX file. And in order to show, let me show you this, the parameterization. So if I go over here in the demo assets, we have created the variables. Okay, so msdemo root directory, this is the path which we have created for the parameterization purpose. So once the connection is created and the run is complete, again, the next part would be to go to the LDM admin and check for the connection, check for the monitoring. And as before, we will do the connection assignment. Once that is done, we will go to the LDM catalog. On the LDM catalog, I went to my human resources schema and check for the employee table, which is my source table. I check for all the columns available. And now I straight away jump to the lineage impact. So once I go to the lineage impact, I see let me switch to the classic view. And maybe change the impact. So once I do that, I see the employee CSC SSIS table available, which is my target table for this implementation, and this under the DView schema. So once I enable the transformation view, I can see the transformation. And in the transformation view, I can see the actual path that we saw where we placed the file, where the package was placed, the DTSX file. And under that, if I try to expand few columns, let's see, little, I can see the calculations coming up. Similarly, like again, for the data flow task, I will click here, and in the system attributes, I see the visualization link. Once I click the link, it takes me back to the same visualization view on the Metadex side. Now, let's switch our gears from SSIS to SSRS. So as we know that, like from the SSRS source perspective, we have two options from the Metadex perspective. So one is using the web services, and then there is the file-based approach. So web services is definitely the recommended approach, and let's go ahead with the demo for that. So in order to check for the web services, I have created one report as SSRS underscore report underscore WS underscore TT underscore RDL, which is like a reporting type project within the Visual Studio. So once I've created this, like I have imported a data set, which was actually the output file for the SSIEB project, which that is the person.ssisdb underscore output. And now when the report is generated, I have tried to generate the report. I've run that, and this is the report available. And the same RDL file is available on the server as well under the now, once the report is available on the SSRS server, the next part is let's get back to our advanced scanner host and create the SSRS type resource. So once we do that, here we can see that we have selected the SSRS source as the web service. And since we are selecting the web service, the other important part is to select the web service username, web service password. Web service username needs to essentially be the Windows authenticated name, and web service domain is the enterprise domain on which the login has been created. Web service URL is something has to be the report service 20,000 ASMX value only. And this can be obtained from the report service configuration manager where the SSRS is hosted. And I have just included one filter, which is so that I want all the reports under this SSRS underscore TT folder to be fetched only. And I have created the resource here as adv underscore scanner underscore SSRS underscore web service.tt. So once the scan is completed and like the execution is done, we can go to the LDM admin to figure out. So now we see that the resource is available on the LDM admin. And on the monitoring side, like as the previous projects, we have just done the connection assignment to the source DB. And now once this is done, let's little bit get back to the LDM catalog. So as I mentioned before, our source table is person.ssisdb.output, which was the like output for the SSISDB that we created. So here, when we go to the lineage, I see that from the person, we see the flow from SSISDB output and to the SSRS source. Let me a little bit increase the impact here. So here, as we see, like from the SSIS output, it's coming. Let me select a couple of attributes here. So here we can see based on that, so SSRS TT is the folder. This is the project WTT, and under the folder we have the data set followed by the actual report. So in that we have a data set followed by the fields, and then similarly we have the actual report that has the fields here. And again, once we click on the report, it will show us the visualization link. Once we click on the visualization links, it will take us to the Metadex. Similarly, the way we saw for the SSIS, and it will show the the visualization lineage from the Metadex perspective as well. Now, let's get started with scanning a SSRS resource where the input reader mode is files. So here, as part of this demo, I have created a SSRS type project, and here so what I've done is I've created a new report, and I've created a data set, and using the input file as DVO employees CST SSIS, which was essentially the output file for the SSIS project we just saw. So here, once we have created it, the report was created and I ran the report. So once the report was run, like I see the report getting generated successfully. And once the report is there, also I see that it's getting saved locally on my system, the RDL file, which is essentially under the repos folder. Let me go there. So in the repos, like I have SSRSDB, under which under the bin and debug. Essentially, it will be the SSRS report TT_DL, the file is there. So, so the basic idea is once the RDL file is generated and is available, the next part would be to use the SSRS exporter utility provided by Informatica to convert that to an XML format. So in order to do that, I've downloaded the utility provided by Informatica under the temp location, and this basically consists of an exe file and a JSON file. So the JSON file something looks like this. So we basically need to provide the like the username, password, our Windows authentication domain. Similarly, like the way we use the Windows authentication or SSIS, we need to use the Windows authentication or SSRS as well. And here I have included the filter, which is like SSRSTT, which is the folder under the repos, so that it doesn't checks for any of the reports under any of the other folders, just as part of this demo. So once the report, once the JSON file is set and we need to execute the utility, and once it execute, you will see it on the command prompt. And once it is generated, we will see a file, something like this, like SSRS report td.xml getting generated. So once this XML file is generated, we will need to, copy this file or move this file to our Linux server that we did earlier. So I've copied this file to my XML location path, and the same path will be defined while configuring the resource on the Metadex side. So on the Metadex side, this is my resource I've created. So here, like it's the conversion path is Microsoft SSRS to EDC, and my input file is this complete path. I'm using the absolute path here instead of defining the parameterized path. Either path is fine to be defined. And here, like since again I'm reading from XML file, I'm not defining any connection. And in the EDC, I have created a connection which is looks like the which will look like the ADV underscore scanner underscore SSRS underscore TT. So once this connection is completed and executed successfully, we can see the connection available. And once a connection is there, we can see the created. And once we go to the monitoring tab, we should see the success. And only the next part done is the connection assignment. And once that is complete, we will go to the catalog. So here, since the source path was employee CST SSIS, I'm going to that. The columns are there that got populated as part of the SSIS. And once I go to this lineage, I see that employee is coming to the SSIS and then to the SSRS. Let me change the impact. So here we can see from the employee, the previous we saw getting to the SSIS table, and from SSIS we are essentially generating a report out of it. So here are the data set items and the fields out of the data set, and the SSRS report TT is the report that we see, and these are the corresponding fields that are getting generated as part of the lineage. So this is basically the SSRS report. And again, like the visualization, once we click on the visualization tab, we will see the visualization coming up on the Metadex side.
Hi all, we have reached the Q&A part. Please post your questions.
So meanwhile, we get the questions. There were some questions in the QA box, so probably I'll get started with them. So one of the question was that if we can use the SQL authentication for SSIS packages. So for the answer for that is no, the SQL Server authentication cannot be used for SSIS. This is as per the design, how the Microsoft has designed the product. So if you are dealing with SSIS, whether it's you are extracting directly from the SSISDB or using the DTFX file, only the supported authentication mechanism is the Windows authentication only.
Hi, Kevin. For your question of log errors such as no default value for the following variable, can you please elaborate?
So there's a question on once you have your SSIS, SSRS scanners configured and scanned from reports and packages, what's the best way to debug errors? In the Metadex UI itself, you can get into the logs section and download the debug log. That should, especially the one that has error as a tag, so you might have seen the logs are classified into info, error, and warnings. The error will show up as error in the log file. So download the debug log file, and then from there you can start with the troubleshooting for any errors. The question from Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. We get majority of questions from the SSRS, especially like web service mode and file reader mode. The file reader mode requires that utility as you saw in the webinar today. So ensure that you have sufficient access and permissions to run that utility with the JSON file. And web service is the preferred approach. Ensure that syntax of the URL for web service is accurate, and that's the preferred method. It doesn't need a file export utility in that way.
Any more questions?
So I see the similar question for SSRS as well. So yes, SSRS will require the Windows authentication as well. And to double check, you can always go to your SSRS configuration manager and you can check the user that has been set up over there. So that will give you a clear understanding of how the authentication has been configured by your respective SSRS admin. And again, it is always a great practice, as we talk about the best practices, it is a best practice to go for the Windows authentication, even when the regular SQL Server authentication is supported. Do you have any further questions?
There are no questions further. We will close this session. Thank you, Srini, Punit, and Wojciech for this amazing session. We would like to inform that all Tech Tuesday webinar will be available on Success Portal under the Resources tab. Today's webinar will be available tomorrow, where you can view the recording and also download the slide deck. Please fill in the survey as your feedback is important to us. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you.